Welcome back to Publishing Power. We are continuing our series of the 38 story elements. And again, today I have my co-host, Christina Stanley from Fictionary. Welcome, Christina.
Hi, Joellen. So today of the Fictionary story elements, we're going to cover two, and we're going to cover tension and conflict at the same time.
Awesome. So, tension and conflict, what's the difference here?
That's a great question, and a lot of people struggle with this, so I'd love to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
So tension is the expectation that something bad is going to happen, but it's not actually happening.
Okay.
So it's the expectation that if you think of Jurassic Park in one of the scenes where the bus is at the edge of the cliff, but nothing's happened yet, they're just sitting there, kind of wavering.
Mm-hmm.
That's tension because you're waiting. Is the bus going to go this way or that way? But you don't know yet, but it's super tense. Conflict is when something is actually happening. So when that bus goes over the cliff and they're trying to scramble out and their conflict is against nature basically at this time, it's something physically happening or it's an argument happening in action. And so one is the expectation of something bad, and that's tension. And the other is the bad thing is happening right now, and that's conflict.
And this is really important to our writing because we have to manage that to get that story arc we've been talking about. So,
Mhm.
how do we use this effectively without wearing out our readers?
Yeah, and that's another great point. So you don't want to wear out your readers. And so we can use action scenes and sequel scenes to do that. And when there's, you have a few action scenes in a row, the reader needs to take their breath. And to do that, you have a sequel scene, which still has to have tension in it. It can't be boring, but it doesn't have to be full of conflict. And so it's a scene where maybe the protagonist is reflecting on what happened, or they're making a plan for what to do next because of what happened. There's some kind of reaction to the conflict that has happened in previous scenes. And it gives the reader also, they can process it just like the main character is processing it. The reader can do that too.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to go through and look at that. Tell me what do we have to do to figure this out and how do we gauge this?
Yeah, so you want to pay attention to the story arc. Clearly, your key scenes, the inciting incident, plot point one, the midpoint, plot point two, and the climax have to have the most tension and conflict. And the climax must have the most. So if you have another scene prior to climax that has more tension and more conflict, your climax is going to be a letdown. So you need to pay attention to the key scenes, and particular to the climax better be the biggest whammy.
Okay. I'm going to say it here. I know we're just giving out information, but this is when having a tool really helps because this is a lot to manage. A lot to manage. So we're going to go through this. We're going to look at it, and then we have to evaluate how well we're following that story arc. I can't
Mhm.
pretend to get a tool like yours and get the story arc because it's just easier. So tell us how, if we're going to do this manually or if we were going to do it in story coach work, how would we do this?
Yeah, so really what you want to be doing now as a writer is you want to be looking at every scene and assessing, is there tension? And you can either just go, yep, there's tension, that's great. Or if you want to be more specific and really analyze it, write down in a few words, what is the tension? And is there conflict? And again, it's the same thing. You put a tick mark, yes, or no, or maybe a little description of what the conflict is. And when you've done that for every scene, you can look for a pattern and you can see, wow, I had 5 scenes in a row that had no tension and no conflict. That's a place where the reader's going to skim. And if it's that long, they're probably going to put your book down and not come back to it. You know, really the guideline is there should be tension in every single scene.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not your final scene where you're just closing it off. And, if it's a romance and the lovers walk happily into the sunset, that's fine. But up until that very final scene, there must be tension, but there doesn't need to be conflict in every scene. And so with conflict, you're looking for how much, and is there a breather for the reader in between so that, they can process what's happened in the story. And so it's a big job, but totally worth it because without tension, a reader's not getting to the end of the book.
All right, so we're going to look at all of our scenes again. And folks, you don't have to do this all each 38 times, but again, when you're going through, this is a very, very important thing to look at and resolve your conflict and your tension and make sure that it's following the story arc, which is the most important goal here because we really got to make sure that you're creating the book that people want again and again and again. So again, thank you for joining us today. Christina, it's always wonderful talking to you. We'll see you again soon.
Yep. Thanks, Joellen.